welcome along to what is now our 14th past conversation, and I am delighted today to be joined by India Divers, who is the Learning Officer for the National Trust for Scotland based at the Bannockburn Visitor Centre. So hi India, thanks very much for coming along.
Yeah, hi Paul, thanks so much for inviting me to take part. I'm really excited to be involved. Like you said, I'm the Learning Officer at the Battle of Bannockburn, part of the National Trust for Scotland.
India, one of the questions that we've asked pretty much everyone that we've spoken to so far is about their memories of studying history at school. And I wonder, is there anything that stands out for you?
Yes, I just absolutely loved history at school. It was definitely my favourite subject, and from a young age I've got memories that my granddad would always tell me about history. We'd always travel around Scotland visiting different historical sites, so I think that's really where my passion stemmed from. And then in primary school I was really interested when we studied we never had like history as a subject, but you always did topics, and sometimes those topics were history topics, and I think I remember it was just very engaging, and there was always that sort of element of storytelling and being also a bit creative in it. It wasn't just about learning history. Like we got to do projects like I remember reading the Vikings, and we had to pretend that we were a Viking and we were writing a letter to our family. So it was that sort of idea of becoming a character and kind of thinking about what it would have been like to live in that period and in a different environment, and not just about learning about facts and things. And then in history at high school, I loved that as well, because I was really lucky in first year to have a really inspiring teacher, Miss Swinley, who was really engaging and really brought history to life as well. So all throughout studying history at school, I had a really good experience with it.
I've already mentioned you are a learning officer for the visitor centre at the Battle of Bannockburn, based in Stirling for the National Trust. But I'm just curious, what does that actually involve? What do you do?
So it's a really varied job. I think that's one of the most kind of exciting parts of the job, is that every day can be so different. One of the big aspects of the job is the school visits. We get lots and lots of school visits throughout the year, from primary 4 all the way up till S6. And it's really good fun when you get that face-to-face delivery, and you get to engage with the school pupils, and it makes it even more fun as well that we've got replica armour and weapons, and the children get the chance to dress up in as a knight or an archer or a member of the infantry, and that's a really good fun part of the day, and I think it's one of my favourite parts of the job as well. But there's lots more things that I do as part of my job. It's not just school visits, which I think a lot of people might think that a learning officer is, they associate that with school visits, but there's so much more as well involved. I work with all audiences, all ages and backgrounds, so it can be adults or families, or I was looking to sort of develop programming for young people as well. So, there's lots of different people that you get to work with, which is quite fantastic. And as well as delivery, it can be making resources. So one of the things that I do is try and increase the accessibility to the centre. So making things like sensory backpacks and communication cards and things, and just trying to really make it accessible to a wide variety of audiences to participate, because there's some things that might be barriers for people, especially at the Battle of Bannockburn. We've got quite an immersive nature to the 3D experience, which can be quite overwhelming for some people. So something that we were looking to introduce just before lockdown, it sort of hit, so we weren't able to go ahead with it, but everything had sort of been set up for us to do our first autism friendly tour. So that was a really great project to be involved with. I also manage the volunteers, which has been fantastic. We've got a really passionate team of volunteers that I get to work with. And I also get to do a bit of post on social media. I get to sometimes do outreach to schools as well. I get to plan events. It's so varied that it is so much fun. And I always end up doing maybe quite strange things that I never thought would be part of the job. Like I was involved in some filming for an induction video, which ended up being me being chased by a group of school children waving wooden swords. So there's some really sort of, creative, fun, crazy things that you get to be involved with as part of the job as a learning officer.
One thing that I've been wondering and wanting to ask you is in relation to your job, you're obviously immersed in kind of all aspects of, medieval Scotland and Scottish history, but is there anything about the history of Scotland that particularly interests you?
It's quite interesting actually, because before working at the Battle of Bannockburn, the history I'd sort of studied was predominantly modern history. From that sort of school and university, it wasn't even particularly Scottish history. It was, American history. Something I really enjoyed studying at university was the civil rights movement and things. So it was actually fantastic working at the Battle of Bannockburn, getting the chance to learn about medieval Scotland, because it's something that just for some reason had never come up through school and university. I'd never got the chance to study it. So having the opportunity to learn about it was fantastic. And again, just with the nature of the site, it really brings it to life, and it can be a really fun thing to teach, especially with things like when we've got primary groups in, we get to do shiltern training with them, and it's it's a really fun sort of immersive thing that that they get to pretend that they're the soldiers in the army, and I think that can be really good fun. But as well, through the lecture series that we do, we sort of expand a little bit more, and we're not just so focused on the Battle of Bannockburn, and we get to I get to learn about new topics in history when we invite speakers. And I think one that really stands out for me is when Donna Moore from the Glasgow Women's Library came to speak, because she was talking about Scottish suffragettes. And at school, I loved learning about the suffragettes, but something that we never really made the connection to in class was sort of the efforts of the Scottish suffragettes. I think this is something that came up in one of the previous episodes as well, is that's something that's not so much focused on. Fantastic learning about suffragettes in Dundee, and even in Bannockburn there was an incident where there was a suffragettes incident at Bannockburn, in the area. So it's just fantastic when you can learn about that connection. It sort of brings it to life a little bit, gives you a bit more of a connection to the history. So that's something that really stood out for me.
And just lastly, India, again, a question that we've asked or put to a lot of the people that I've been able to speak to, and it's about advice, really. And if a young person, for example, was looking towards a career in heritage, I wonder, is there anything that you would say to them?
Absolutely. So one thing I think that's important to point out is that there's many routes into the heritage sector. There's not just one route that you should follow. And a lot of the routes that I think are promoted are quite academic routes. Like I know myself, I did a history degree and then I did a museum studies degree, and that's how I got into it. But I think it's important to note that that's not the only way to get into the sector. You don't actually need any sort of academic qualifications necessarily to work in heritage. And there's so many different ways that you can get into the sector. And I think getting involved through work experience and volunteering can be a good way to find out all the different kind of routes. So if you start talking to heritage professionals, they'll all give you a different story of how they got into the job. And that can be a good way to figure out, well, actually, I don't necessarily need to do a degree. If that's not my thing, then, there might be another way to do this. And I think work experience as well can really open up the opportunities in heritage. Not everybody's a curator and a learning officer that you can do in the sector. People work in marketing or fundraising and doing all different roles within the sector. It's not just all about being an expert in history. There's lots of different things you can do, and work experience can really get you some of that experience that will give you the foot in the door as well. One thing that I think is really good if you're a young person looking to get involved with heritage is lots of museums and heritage sites now have youth panels that you could be on, and that not only gives you that sort of voluntary experience, it lets you meet other people your age interested in those things, and a lot of the time if you're on a youth panel you might get more decision making sort of role than you would just volunteering. So you might actually museum how you want it to look. So it can be a really exciting opportunity to get involved in heritage that way.